Wow. Very cool. That's for sure. Pretty good.
Already when you want to start. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the July 8th, 2024 Yolo Transportation District Board of Directors meeting to order. I'll let the record reflect it is 6 o'clock PM on the dot. And we have a forum. All of my colleagues are here and present. With that, we are going to move to agenda item number 2, approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Motion to approve, but second.
All right, a motion by Director Ferris, second by Director Stollard. Any other comments on our agenda? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained. We now have an agenda. Before we start, a couple different things I want to address. You may see some balloons and a makeshift throne with some candles on it over here. It is Director Lauren's 40th birthday today, and she decided to grace us with her presence at this meeting here this evening. So we all wish you a wonderful happy birthday. Thank you for spending your time with us. There are birthday cupcakes over there on the side as well for some sugar rush if people need it. It's over there. And thank you to our staff here for helping throw this together for Director Lauren this evening. Also, Sergio is here. Sergio is one of our reps from Caltrans. Unfortunately, cannot stay for the duration of our meeting here this evening. So he does have some comments on our agenda item that's coming up later. So I'm going to ask Sergio to come up and make his comments now before we go to our general public comment. So welcome, Sergio.
Thank you very much, Chair, Vice Chair, and Directors. I really appreciate the opportunity to just say a few words here at the start of the agenda, and you allow me to do so. So this is the first time that I'm here, and just wanted to just start by mentioning my appreciation for all of the work. Okay, sorry, I can hear fine. All of the work that we've done together, our staff, your staff, I really want to commend Autumn Bernstein for all her leadership throughout the process of getting the YoloTD project to where it is now. And also just to briefly mention a little bit about myself. I met many of you, but many of you probably don't know me. So I spent 26 years with Caltrans. 20 of those were District 3 in many different positions. More recently, I was in headquarters as a state pavement engineer, division chief over maintenance, and more recently, deputy director over maintenance and operations. I live in New York City, so I'm locally living in the community. And when the opportunity came up upon Amarjeet's retirement to take the acting position within District 3 to act as the district director, I could not pass it up, and that's why I'm here. And I'm very much about partnerships and working with all stakeholders on important initiatives and important projects moving forward. I also want to update this board that July 15th, Caltrans will be updating and releasing the new strategic management plan. This is going to cover the years 2024 to 2028. This is our old, or I should say our current strategic management plan. This is the last year, so again, we're updating it. It's going to focus on really 5 strategic goals, what we call the 4 core, plus organizational excellence related to people first. So safety, equity, climate action, and economic prosperity. I also want to just mention that I look forward to the actions this board is going to take on the YoloTD project coming up later on in the agenda. Unfortunately, I probably will not be here. I have other commitments that I need to go to, but you're in good hands for any questions. Both the district single focal point, Greg Wong is here, as well as our project manager. And I'll take this opportunity to also acknowledge the Caltrans team, especially Greg and Gertesh, for all the leadership that they've displayed and all the hard work that they've put in together with the rest of the delivery team to get this project to where it is now. So again, thank you for the opportunity to just say these brief few words. I will not take more of your precious time. And unless there's any questions for me, I just want to thank you and wish you well.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you for taking the time to be here this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna now move on to agenda item number 3, which is general public comment. General public comment is for items listed on the consent calendar or items that are not listed on the agenda. So if we have any general public comment for tonight's meeting, please come forward. Welcome.
Alan Hirsch. First, I want to clear the air. I sent you a number of emails of great concern about the draft cooperative agreement I got from Ryan Abernath. And I think he over disclosed, I don't know if that's over disclosed, such a thing, but basically I was concerned about this, very concerned about this draft contract and it not being resolved, because it basically said how much is this agency on the hook versus Caltrans in terms of the mitigation and the follow through. And I thought this was still in the law, and I've had talked with Kirk, and it seems to have been resolved. It seems you guys are not on the hook, and that's good, and I think that's appropriate. So everything I sent you on in that regard, I think I wish I'd got called back, but fine. You don't need to worry about that. So thank you very much. Thank you for indulging. I'm sorry I took your time. I spent a lot of time writing it too, but that's all resolved. In terms of the other thing, let's see, what my other thing. We are now facing tremendous heat, climate change, we have fires, we have clearly a climate disaster. And I want to reflect back to your vision, values, and priority sheets. That basically says, the core values are transparency, inclusivity, and accountability, domestic inequalities, and vulnerable communities, which particularly those people who wait for the bus and have to work outside are faced with this in a disproportionate way than us of us who are in executive positions and having inside jobs. But the third bullet is environmental sustainability and climate resilience. And the fourth is efficiency, innovation, responsibility. Nowhere is mentioned traffic congestion. Nowhere is mentioned these other values that seem to be override the I-80 project. So this is a wonderful document, but are we living up to it? It's really important we do. We have a climate crisis, so I appreciate that and appreciate the document, the aspirations here, but we need to make this more than an aspirational document. I know most of you are volunteers here on the board and care deeply about the community, and this is a real challenge. This is a really hard point. But just like the South during the apartheid Jim Crow in the 60s, where all these civic leaders believed in integration, but just not yet. And that's why King was basically challenging those in the middle who were waffling. So we need to challenge ourselves. Even though we believe in climate change, we just aren't willing to make the tough choices right now. And our children and our grandchildren. So thank you for this document, but we need to live forward, live up to it. And I'm going to try to remind you to do that. And I'm sorry if I'm shrill sometimes, but this is really important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. Do we have any other in-person general public comment? Seeing none, I'll ask if we have any general public comment online.
We do not have any hands raised online,
Okay,
but we did receive one additional written comment. And that went out to the board. It was from Hayden Miller regarding beeline service in winters.
yes, thank you. I think all of my colleagues and I received that public comment today, so thank you for that reminder. So with that, we will close our general public comment, and I'll bring it back to the dais to entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Early moves, Lauren seconds.
All right, we have a motion by Director Early, a second by Director Lauren. Any other comments or questions on the consent calendar? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain. All right, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, we are now on to agenda item number 5, is the whole continued public hearing on our revised.
Is that the minutes? Did you approve the minutes there?
Yeah, that was the consent calendar.
I have a public comment on the minute. If you can open it up and raise me back.
Yeah, that's usually general public comment, but if you. For items on the consent calendar or not on the agenda, but if you'd like to make a brief comment.
Thank you. Last meeting, you had a very robust discussion about the budget. And I think that was in part catalyzed, not just about the West Sacramento, but about the lack of ridership statistics. and how you guys really want that and its future budget. And I think I was the one that catalyzed that observation. And the public minutes don't reflect that at all. Don't reflect my contributions at all. Don't reflect what I say at all, the substance of it. And you look at it. And also my documents that I submit are not in the minutes. That's part of the public record is the public record, not just what the public says, but it's a rubble that every people got access. There was a letter handed on this other, it's an input on the beeline that was not made available to the public. I think under the Brown Act law, all things given to the board within 72 hours must be made immediately available to the public. I don't want to be a legal stickler, but I think when people make comments, you should be respectful for them to be included in the minutes. And the documents they submit be included in the minutes in a public way. And this, you guys, the board used to do this in the Terry Bassett era. Because I have because I look back in March of 2021, when you guys got approved the funding of the IA, my public comments, my written comments are in that minutes of that meeting. So
Mr.
I would
Allen,
hope that you put this
assume
in.
your
put
1
this
minute
in.
extra time.
Great, thank you, Ellen.
I would appreciate if you would include that in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we will move on to agenda item number 5, which is hold continued public hearing on our revised preliminary draft budget for fiscal year 24-25 and approve resolution 2024-12, adopting the budget for our fiscal year 24-25. And I will turn it over to Chaz. Welcome.
Good evening, board members, members of the public and Caltrans. Okay, so we are here again to discuss the fiscal year 24-25 proposed final budget. We came to the board in May to have the initial discussion, returned in June with eliminating restoration of West Sacramento routes 40 and 240. And at the board's direction, we reinstated the restoration of those two routes in this version that you are seeing today. At that June meeting, the board adopted or approved the preliminary budget until we return in July. So we're all here today to discuss just the changes that we made since the June meeting and then to answer any additional questions that you might have. So I just have a brief PowerPoint slide to guide us through what the changes are. You have additional detail within the staff report. And then you have a packet of the slides itself.
So feel horrible problem to have. Can't see past the celebratory balloons.
All right, so this first slide here shows the revised budget and the changes from the June preliminary budget to July. For the administrative operating expenses, there was no change there. The fixed route operating expenses, that's where we had most of our discussion at the June meeting, which was pretty much around route 240 and 40 itself. So as you can see, we restored those routes, having the increase at about 336,000. For microtransit operating expenses, reviewing the budget, we review, get another chance to look at everything, we get another chance to review our tables, revisit the allocations, budgets are estimates. So anytime we get additional time, we're gonna review more things and massage more things. And as we get more actuals in, our projections get a little more fine tuned. So with the microtransit operating expenses, we did revisit all the service hours for Woodland, Winters, and Night Blending, and determined that additional hours were needed in Woodland. So that change that you see of $52,000 was an adjustment in estimate, which was a result of adding about 800 additional service hours to the microtransit in Woodland. And then for paratransit, again, we revisited a few other things, made a few change in estimates there. So you see a little credit, a little decrease there of about 7,000. Overall, our budget change from June to July was 381,000, which will be funded because the fixed route operating expenses were for the West Sacramento routes. They will be funded with the Sacramento 5307 UZA funds. And then for the microtransit, additional 800 hours that will be funded with the FTA 5307 Woodland funds.
Mr. Chair,
Sure, Director Stoller.
in the context of the budget, okay, because it's not otherwise agendized.
a writer has told us that they felt the fixed route service to Winters was more reliable and easier to use than our beeline has proven to be in Winters. I'd be interested to know if there's a staff opinion on that.
So that has come up.
Costs.
Yeah, that has come up, and that is something that with our new short range transit plan, which is currently under development, we are looking at where micro transit's working, where fixed route is working, and if we have the right mix of fixed route and micro transit in the right places. So that is one of the items that we're looking at in our short range transit plan. I will say, we're very aware of the challenges that the micro transit has in Winters, and it's part of the reason we've talked about adding a second vehicle to that area. That is something we can do fairly quickly. We have the vehicles and we would not need to go through another public process to simply add an additional vehicle. Well, there would be some amount of public process, but so that is our proposal for this year. If the short range transit plan comes back and says, actually, we think that, fixed route works better in Winters and we should eliminate micro transit, or we need a combination of the two, I think that's when we would bring that, to the board for your attention and discussion at that time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna go through each of the slides. I'll go through them, and if you guys want to ask questions at the end, you're welcome to do that. You're welcome to answer questions in each of the slides at the end.
Sure, thank you, Jess.
All right, Norma, next slide, please. So I provide a slide for the individual changes, although I just talked about them. This is more for transparency for anyone who gets a hold of our PowerPoint slides and wants to know a little bit more. So it might be a little repetitive, but here are the fixed route operating expense change. As we mentioned in the previous slide, the change is an increase of 336,000. The increases were due to the restoration of a few trips for Route 40 in the early morning and evening, and then for Route 240, restore additional weekday trips. Next slide, please. And then for microtransit, this was our change in estimate and the service hours. We are planning for fiscal year 24-25. So as a result, we increased the service hours of about 800 hours, which resulted in the $52,000 increase. And as I mentioned earlier, that will be funded with FTA 5307 Woodland funds. Next slide, please. Paratransit, this was just a slight change in cost estimate with a slight decrease of $7,000. Next slide. And then in your packet, the actual staff report, you have a snapshot of the 5-year outlook. And then in the slides, you'll see a more condensed table of the 5-year outlook. I didn't think that we needed to repeat each one of them. I did a little something different in this, where this one is the condensed version where you're not seeing all the detail of the different funding sources. You'll see that in the second line where it says total base revenues. So I didn't change any of the funding sources within the total base revenue section, because I wanted you to be able to see what the impact was when we restored Route 40 and 240 and the additional hours in microtransit. So this appears as though, I'm sorry, I forgot I gave you the previous one. So this is the previous one showing no deficit in the 24-25. And then you see the additional amount in the 25-26. The next slide is the one that we updated. Next slide, please, Norma. This is today's update, the condensed version. So what you're seeing here, let's get to that page. This is where I did a little bit something different, and it was just more for discussion and just to kind of follow along, in a more summarized version. So in the total base revenues, as I was mentioning earlier, it's that second orange line in the budget book itself, and in the staff report, you'll see the full table. Here, you're just seeing the total base revenues. That's the one that I kept the same as the previous version in June, because I wanted you to see the difference. So this is where you're seeing the restoration of 40 and 240 and the increase to microtransit, showing the base funding excess deficit of 367,911. I will let you know that is not a deficit. This is just for illustrative purposes to show you what the impact was in restoring those routes and increasing the microtransit for Woodland. This as I mentioned in the few slides before, those changes will be funded with FTA 5307 money. So in the adopted final budget, you will see that deficit go to zero because we need to have a balanced budget. And as you can see, the two aren't balanced in this table. So I wanted to just point that out. I hope I didn't confuse anyone. Did I
It's a
leave-
balanced budget we're adopting.
Yes, you are adopting a balanced budget here. If you look at the first orange line, 21,604,911. And then right below it is 21,237,000. That doesn't show a balanced budget because I left that 367,911 there so that you had something to compare to. And I did the same for 25-26. And then for the increases, that's where you're seeing where we will fund the additional cost for 40-240 in microtransit is the use of additional formula funds, 5307 formula funds. And that's the only update. That's the last update.
Thank you, Chaz. Do I have any clarifying questions for Chaz before we open up public comments? Yeah, anyone? Okay, so
One quick question.
sure, Director Ferris.
Thanks so much for the updates. Appreciate those. I just one quick question on one of the notes, the footnotes, and it has to do with the increased formula funding. And it talks about the sort of pending negotiations between YTD and Unitrans, potential additional usage of
Yes.
city of Davis UZA funds. So
Mhm.
I know that's not, yeah, and we talked about this at the last meeting as well, sort of trying to work with Unitrans to formalize the long sort of standing, just informal agreement. That I'm just hoping that there's an ability, that will be kept in, sort of a red as the process moves forward in terms of how those negotiations are going. And I think it's obviously pretty important that we formalize the agreement, first of all, but also I think probably make sure that we partially fill that sort of funding gap with increased usage of the Davis UZA funds. So I just wanted to sort of make sure that we're adopting that in the months ahead.
We are in discussion with Unitrans. We started talking with them early June about it. So we're hopeful to have more discussions sooner than later.
Thank you, Director Ferris. Okay, so now we will go ahead and open public comment for agenda item number 5. And we'll welcome our first public commenter.
Well, thank you, Michael Barnbaum of Sacramento. And wanted to testify on item number 5. Very well-written and presented item. Read through it thoroughly in preparation for tonight's meeting. Some points I'd like to make, which I think could even build upon what has been written in the report and presented tonight. And that folks work collaboratively among stakeholders, staff, and your board to 4 things. Implement a service expansion of up to 16 additional daily trips on routes 42A, 42B. That would truly reshape the timetable of this particular service to every 30 minutes from the start of the service day to the conclusion of the service day by assisting all involved with overcoming challenges to vehicle operator recruitment retention while simultaneously maintaining the aging fleet and assisting the district in successfully applying and obtaining grant funding for brand new revenue service vehicles. Number 2, continuously participate and partner with the district in developing a final short-range transit plan that, among other initiatives, implements the goal mentioned in item number 1, previously read into the record from this particular mobile device. Number 3, implement per a directive of the Chief Executive Officer, the revisiting of the Route 42A, 42B schedule and route alignment to serve the new downtown Woodland Transit Center, while also minimizing delays and detours in downtown Sacramento due to special events. And 4th and final point, implement via a cost-sharing agreement amongst regional businesses, organizations, and other transit operators in the 7-county region. So the SACOG region plus San Joaquin County. Between March 16th and October 15th of each calendar year over the next 3 calendar years, a Sacramento ballpark shuttle operating once every 10 minutes between the Sacramento Valley Amtrak station in downtown Sacramento and the West Sacramento Transit Center that would critically stop on the Tower Bridge Gateway to access ball games of the Sacramento Athletics, Sacramento River Cats, and other events at Sutter Health Park, again between March 16th and October 15th of 2025 through 2027. This special service would be subject to extension beyond 2027.
Seconds remaining.
Yeah, and this is my concluding comment or so. The special service would be subject to extension beyond 2027 in collaboration with the River City Stadium Financing Authority, originally spearheaded in alphabetical order by Christopher Cabalden, Roger Dickinson, and Mike McGowan. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Any questions?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to note that it sounds like Tom Stollard was also there.
I was.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm just.
There's 4 on the dream team.
Okay, so do we have any other in-person public comment? Welcome.
But those are definitely some living legends in the national political scene, that's for sure. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Good evening, Alan Hirsch. I'm going to the airport tonight. My luggage is back there. From here, I took the bus here. I tried to at least. I was at the bus stop, I Googled it, but I don't need to take the bus to get here, but for the 6 o'clock meeting at 4:57 at the Save Mart station, 4:50 out of the UC. This is peak travel time, so I got there and waiting around. I actually called Autumn, and we had a discussion about resolve this cooperative contract, and she said, "Have you tried our new cool real-time application app?" I said, "No, I hadn't. I'm just struggling with the automatic ticketing." So I had some extra time, so I struggled through it and I checked it out, and the 4:57 bus doesn't exist. So I had to take a lift up here. 5 o'clock bus out of Davis to Woodland, that's the peak travel time. And that bus stop is unshaded, there's trees, all that other stuff, this is facing west, it wasn't very comfortable. So my plea is that I'm gonna add my voice in addition to the Citizens Advisory Committee who wanted to have more 42 bus service. But this is the Yolo goals, that this is the core of our region, and we need to have more 42 bus service. I know it's not on the agenda, but it has to be a priority. It's very important. These are the long distance travels. These are the big VMT reductions. This is very important. So please, for next year, put it in there. And also we talked last time about predictability. Let's change the subject. The non-financial stuff in the budget, we should be able to do that as soon as possible. The fact that we don't have good ridership numbers is shocking. That how can you do a short range transfer without riders? You know how many customers there are, how can you design your service? So that's the other thing. But thank you very much for listening. Thank you for all your hard work on the board.
Thank you, Alan. Do we have any more in-person public comment? All right. Do we have any online public comment?
We do not have any hands raised online.
Great. Thank you. So with that, we will close public comment on agenda item number 5, and I'll bring it back to the dais to my colleagues for questions, comments, or motion.
I have a question.
Yeah, that's great. Go for it.
Awesome, perfect, thank you. So I'm looking at our packet on, looks like maybe page 17. And just wanting to make sure I understand a couple of things. So for the 5307 UZA Sacramento dollars, we slowly see it increasing year over year. In 25-26, it pops up to 3 million. And I do want to just make sure I understand, is that accounting for kind of like what we see here? I think it's the foot heading number 6. Thank you, because the 1.2 million in accounting for the fact that you're gonna try to grab back some of those funds from the previous year. Is that what that 3 million is accounting for?
Yes, so what we knew at the time when we came in June and we built out the 5-year outlook, that was when as you know, we've been doing a lot of work since I got here to really identify our awards from the previous year and reconcile what we have currently. So we're still in the process of that. So in June, that is what we knew, is that there were funding for the 5307 Woodland UZA and the Sacramento 5307 UZA, in addition to some 5311 money, in addition to discretionary funds as well that were not utilized in the past couple of years. So that was an estimate of what we know we have today and what we determined we did not program for 2 fiscal years, which was for 22 and 23. So that assumption in that 3 million is using current allocations for each of those fiscal years, in addition to spending down any of the previously unprogrammed funds.
So that's really helpful. I have 2 questions. So then when we go to 26, 27, it stays at 3 million for multiple years. And so I was trying to keep up with, is the assumption that because it sounds like maybe we didn't bill for like 2 fiscal years, that all of that is going to exist, like 3 million is going to be available, because the number in my head, that math doesn't math.
No, I get it. And so that's all we can come up with at this time with what we know today. It could be, a slight overestimate, but that is what I know today. That's what I felt comfortable with putting in a 5-year outlook. So, one of our plans, as we discussed at the June meeting, was to establish some sort of like workshop with all of you to discuss funding in more detail, and kind of share with you the findings as we discover them.
That's great, and that's helpful. So then just building on that, when I look at, again, 26, 27, and I go to the potential funding solutions, increased use of formless funding, footnote 10, you have about 1.9, I'm just gonna round up for 2 million, just for ease. And it looks like what you're also counting there is SAC UZA. And so I'm trying to figure out, have we doubled, actually probably triple counted at this point in that 2 million, because you have already the accounted for dollars in the 3 million on the UZA Sacramento line that we're saying, again, we're capturing. And then you also are accounting for basically 2 million in that fund. I appreciate, but I don't think all that money exists. Just based on what you're telling me. Right? Because it was 2 years of not grabbing those dollars. That's 1.2 million, right? So you bring that forward. Again, easy number, round up to 1.5, right?
Yeah.
So you got 3 million previous, and then you're gonna get 1.2 million, 1.2. I don't.
So when we're awarded the 5307 funds, we have about 4 to 5 years to spend.
Okay.
And so the amounts that I brought to the board in June was what we've fresh off of discussion, found out that specifically for 22 and 23, we had not programmed any of those dollars.
Right.
So I don't know what exists for 2020, for 2024 and what we plan for that, and then anything for 2025. I also don't know if we have any discretionary funds. That's what we're working on right now. I understand with the out years, that's where we parked our estimates, with that funding, not knowing as much as, we do with the discoveries that we made in June, alerted us to okay, there's potential for, lapsing funds, not just for 5307. The conservative approach in our 5-year outlook, we could have spread out to other areas as we did in last year's 5-year outlook, but we just, wanted to really simplify, the 5-year outlook in the information that we knew. We can go kind of dime for dime with the other funding sources that are available to us, but just for ease of review and what we were comfortable estimating based on the information that we found out in June. I would say that's our best at this moment.
If I may jump in too, I just want to remind that there are 2 SAC UZA pots of funding. There's that we get by formula, and then there's also some that is discretionary, meaning we compete with other transit agencies in the Sacramento region for. And so Chance can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that what we had under potential funding solutions, that footnote 10, that's discretionary SAC UZA funding, whereas what we had up above is the formula funding that we are guaranteed.
So it's a combination, and that's what we're. we're working on, right?
Okay, I think that's helpful. It sounds like there is more to come. I look forward to diving into that. I will make a preemptive motion to move this forward, but I know that you might have some more comments. No,
To my left.
that was easy.
I'll second her motion. I've had plenty of.
Alright, we have a motion by Director Early, a second by Director Stoller. Do any of my colleagues have
Just a quick
statements, questions?
Yeah, I appreciate you raising that issue, Director Early. I mean, that's actually also why I raised the issue about the sort of formalizing the agreement with Unitrans, and because it also includes the hypothetical increase of those dollars as well. And so, yeah, trying to look at for the variety of sources that might exist. So, yeah, absolutely appreciate, I think thinking very similarly about just sort of the approach. And I think also, I think partly the process, it's definitely, there's a staff component, but I think for those colleagues that serve on the SACOG board, of which a number here do, it's important to like sort of be trying to bird dog, I think, this issue at that board. So when there is sort of discretionary dollars being discussed and sort of giving up of those dollars, that making sure that YTD gets its fair share of those dollars, and I mean, everyone's mostly collaborative, but you gotta like bring the A game, obviously, and everyone at this board always does. So appreciate that folks consider. I think that's a big, big part of the process as well.
And Josh,
Director Stoller?
it might be. Sorry, I would respectfully ask colleagues at the Davis City Council to consider sending their 5307 to this district and an immediate U-turn back to Unitrans, so that it looks fairly similar across the board in terms of overall putting allocated funds into other transit options in our jurisdictions. Because it's expenditure 3,150,000, 3 million. It should be kind of a collegial thing. Thank you.
I appreciate your point. That's exactly why the formalizing of an MOU, not just a handshake agreement, as has been the case for the last 30-ish years, is important. I think
For us, it's now you see it, now you don't. But at the same point, you're shown is similar to the other jurisdictions.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments from my colleagues?
So just the last question, and maybe at the very end of this meeting, when it's, when we talk about the just future agenda items, I would like to, as soon as possible, start to talk about these numbers, how they're calculated, our budget. I know that we have an intention to do that, but an intention without a timeline is just dreams, hopes, and aspirations. So it would be great to at least put that on for future agenda items.
Absolutely, yeah, and thank you for bringing that back up again. Look forward to doing that. And I know that's something, once we kind of get over what we're looking at in tonight's meeting with the I-80 project and with our budget, that there maybe, hopefully, can free up a little bit of time to tackle some of these other issues that have been brought up. So I just want to say thank you to our team. Thank you, Chaz. I know this has not been easy. Thank you, my colleagues, for your thoroughness in this. It's been 3 months, right? We've had 3 meetings that we've taken this budget under consideration and moved and changed and asked tough questions. You've come back each time with thorough answers and got us to a place tonight where it seems like are unanimous in putting this forward. So thank you and your team and Autumn for your leadership in getting us here this evening. So with that, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 6, approve resolution 2024-13, accepting the Yolo 80 managed lanes final environmental impact report, including findings of fact and statement of overriding considerations. And I'm going to turn to Autumn and
While we're doing a quick personnel change, what do I gotta do to get you guys to take some cupcakes? I'm not taking them all home. And that includes the audience. So please get a cupcake. Now, you sit down, I will pass out the cupcakes. Let's see, you have to tell my.
Public commenters, you said.
Biting with shape.
all right, we'll do a 5-minute recess while we do a cupcake.
Chocolate, chocolate.
I saw you turn there.
You're gonna go vanilla?
Okay, now.
Vanilla?
Thank you.
Yeah, Tom's vanilla.
I know, it's been a while. Been on vacation, came back, got sick. So, what I missed?
Yeah.
We want to talk about numbers.
Nothing. So just-
Chocolate or vanilla?
And I think, what is the best?
You go into the equals and the runners.
Whirring around.
Oh, right, yeah, get some chocolate. Other direction.
These are good.
All right, we're back. We're gonna.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone's doesn't have a mouthful of cupcake. Get through the comments and the questions here. So with that, we're gonna turn to Autumn and Brian. Welcome. See that time?
That was good timing. Waitress start.
Good evening, Chair Chapman, YoloTD board members. And happy birthday, Director Lauren, appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Item before you today, so you've got 3 items before you this evening, related to the YoloTD management project. This first one kind of relates to the environmental responsibilities that YoloTD has as a responsible agency. But before we get too far into that, and just as a quick note, each of these items is roughly 6 to 8 slides. So we know that there's probably gonna want to be a lot of conversation and discussion, but we're trying to keep the staff presentation as brief and informative as possible. So can we skip to the next slide, please? Just a little bit of background project information, just for those who may not be familiar with the project. Obviously, we're talking about the YoloTD Managed Lanes project, which is a highway expansion project to add 4 lanes, 1 in each direction on Interstate 80 and US 50 between Solano and Sacramento County lines. You'll also hear us referring to the project in terms of phase 1, which is the project that's immediately before you from a funding standpoint. And so phase 1 in the eastbound direction starts at Richards Boulevard in Davis and continues to the I-80 US 50 split, and then the westbound direction starts at that same split and ends at Mace Boulevard. So this phase 1 project that we're referring to is approximately $200 million. And so now circling kind of back to the action for tonight, the environmental impact report. So for this project, EIR clears the entire project, not just phase 1. So it's important to keep that in mind because there's the full project and then there's the first phase of the project. As a quick note, Caltrans did file their notice of determination on the EIR on April 30th of this year. Next slide, please. It's also useful to, it's going to take a brief step back in history on this project for recent activity. Back in January, recall that SACOG and YoloTD took action to form a Capital Area Regional Tolling Agency or Authority, which is the tolling authority for the Sacramento region. And
At this time, the draft EIR had already been released and the public comments had been closed. And so at that time, Caltrans was in the process of, formulating responses to EIR comments that they received. In March, Carta submitted the tolling application to the CTC to be given authority by the CTC for becoming a tolling authority. And then in late April, as I mentioned earlier, EIR was filed, certified. CTC then later that month approved tolling authority to Carta and awarded the TSEP funding award, which closed the phase one project financial gap. So then that brings us to today, where two of your key actions here are taking action of the responsible agency on the final environmental impact report, as well as what we're calling requesting your approval to execute a capital project transfer and expenditure contract, which is a very fancy way of saying a funding agreement to transfer the funding over to Caltrans. Next slide. I alluded to some of our responsibilities as a responsible agency, and so this slide just sort of defines those a little bit more clearly. Caltrans is the lead agency. They scope the project for environmental purposes. They issue the notice of preparation. They they conduct all the analysis on the project, and they issue draft EIR, respond to comments, and then ultimately certify it. So they have the primary role as a lead agency in CEQA. YoloTD does have a role as well, because we're considered a responsible agency. And that's because we do have some discretionary authority over the project by virtue of being the recipients of the $85.9 million infra award. So that's why we're taking this action tonight. And so the role that you have is to take action that you've considered the EIR that Caltrans has prepared in your actions this evening. Next slide, please. Oh, it's already there. So I won't go into too much detail. I think I've already covered a lot of the history as well. But in December, we did discuss the draft EIR. Some of the outcomes of that were that most of the findings in the draft EIR were either less than significant or less than significant with mitigation, with the exception of transportation and BMT. And this is new information. You guys are all aware of that. But just sort of summarizing that for you, draft BMT mitigation plan was also introduced at that meeting. So there was conversation and discussion amongst the board and staff and Caltrans related to BMT mitigation. Also, there was questions and response related to equity and JPA representation, because Carta hadn't been formed yet. So that was the nature of that conversation back in December. So the final EIR, which was filed in April, which I just mentioned, didn't have any substantive changes in those areas. There was some refinement to the BMT mitigation plan, but that was largely the extent of it. Also noteworthy, in May of 24, there were two lawsuits that were filed against the project, one by Environmental Council of Sacramento, one by Sierra Club. So those are proceeding along their track, and we'll see how those play out. And then the last action here related to the EIR is the action that you're going to be taking. Next slide, please. Okay, so the actual actions that you're taking relate to two documents. One is called the findings of fact, the other is statement of overriding considerations. For those who might not be as familiar with these CEQA terms, findings of fact simply summarizes the extent of the environmental impacts and identifies mitigation measures. And those findings of facts are included as an attachment to the resolution that you have. Again, the significant finding here is mostly related to BMT, and the meaning of your action today is that you've considered these findings of fact in your acceptance of the final EIR. And then accompanying the findings of fact is also called a statement of overriding considerations. This basically acknowledges that there are benefits of the project that outweigh the environmental impacts, and that you balance those against each other and are choosing to support the project as a result. Okay, so I think we can go to the next slide. That concludes our presentation. Again, we have the staff recommendation in front of you, but I recognize there's probably questions and conversation that you'd like to have. And of course, we have our special counsel to this project, Kirk Trost, is with us. He's extremely well versed in these areas and can answer some of the more detailed legal questions if you have any.
Thank you, Brian. Do any of my colleagues have any clarifying questions for Brian or our staff team before we go to public comment? Okay, so let's open up public comment for agenda item number 6, and we will welcome our first public commenter.
Alan Hirsch. This is a massive document, a lot of work. I hope you figured out how to download the 484 megabytes of this project. It's a massive document. I read it. It's quite interesting. I'm concerned that, I know you have to approve this to sort of pass the money on, but I'm concerned that basically back in December, when you had a chance to modify it, you didn't dig in at all. The tape shows you only spent 16.5 minutes reviewing the project and deciding on the alternative for the draft, which we know has problems with the VMT, which is modified. I'm kind of concerned. And I'll give you an example of what some of the things that remain. On page 58 of your staff document, it talks about energy consumption in the project. And it says the energy increase in energy consumption is only short-term due to construction. Now, we know that the VMT is going to increase on this project. So there's more cars, so the energy should increase. But the EIR and the findings says on 58, says that the energy will only be a short-term increase. That's risible. I also will pass out here the mitigation plan. That talks about microtransit. That microtransit can reduce VMT. That is not founded in the CAPTOA document. And basically you're only expecting to spend 24 cents passenger mile. It costs $8 a mile to run microtransit per passenger or more. You can only be able to claim maybe 3 or 4% of the VMT reduction by that fine. This document is not going to stand up to court. It's an embarrassment. This is the greenhouse gas is terrible, but it's a small part of what's going to happen destroying the world. But the real cost of this project for YoloTD, the real cost is the lack of trust, because this document is not valid. It is not, you can see it, even a layman like me can read it, not less the UC Davis. You really undermine the trust in our government system, in this process. This is a disappointment. So I know you're going to approve this thing, and when someone dies because no one looked at the safety on the project, we're eliminating the shoulder lanes. And there's a UC Davis study that says basically you cut the shoulder lanes from 12 feet to 2, you increase the collision rate by 3 to 4%. That was not discussed, even though it was commented on. So this is a real disappointment. So I know there's lots of work here. Doing the thing right is fine, but doing the right thing is the real issue here. And I don't think you've done the right thing here. So I'm disappointed. And our community it really.
Mr. Hirsch, you have 10 seconds remaining.
Community to be involved. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for your hard work. I'm sorry it's a bad outcome.
Thank you, Alan. Do we have any other in-person public comment for agenda item number 6? Okay, do we have any online public comment?
We do not have any hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we will close public comment on agenda item number 6. Now we'll bring it back to the dais to my colleagues for questions, comments. Would like to jump in and start. Sure. Kirk Trost.
Thank you. I'll just be real brief, and I want to express appreciation to staff for simplifying the information, providing it clearly, but then also providing the links to the final EIR, the findings of fact, the statement of overriding consideration, as well as all of the information in the record we need access, and really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. Other colleagues, questions, comments? No one else? Sure, Director Warren.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank staff and for making it accessible. It's a lot of information. I'd like to make a motion that let's see, to adopt, item 6 as stated in the staff report, but I'd like to approve resolution, 2024-13, accepting the YOLO 80 managed lanes final environmental impact report, including findings of fact and statement of overriding considerations. Thank you.
And having a second to item. And we have a motion by Director Moore and a second by Director Ferris. Any other comments from my colleagues before we vote? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. It looks like Brian's going to be in the seat for the next couple of years. So now we'll move to agenda item number 7. Approved resolution 2024-14, authorizing the executive director to execute a capital project transfer and expenditure contract with Caltrans for $85.9 million for design and construction of the Yolo 80 managed lanes project. Brian?
Great, thank you. That intro allowed me to catch up to you guys at actually.
An extra bite of cupcake.
Yeah, so this item relates to what we're calling the fund transfer agreement. With obviously this more complex title. We can go to the next slide. In order to really understand the context of the action that you're being asked to take, it's good to look at the costs and the revenue, or the costs and the funding sources for this project. And this is where we're sort of reverting back to the phase 1 aspect of the project, which is the interior segment of the project area. So we have this phase 1 total project cost of almost $200 million. And then you can see in the table in the middle of the page what our funding sources are. And our focus here, can you click one time, please, Norma? Is the infra grant. And so you can see that it's a large portion of the project funding, but it's not the majority of the project funding. That probably belongs to the state TSEP grant, which was just awarded back in May. So that's the $86 million, which you will be taking action on. Next slide, please.
Remind me where the $7.5 million came from.
That was, actually, I think that Gertesh can probably answer this question better than I can, but I'll try to, let me know if I get this wrong. These were sort of pre-construction related costs that they've incurred. And it's independent of the $2 million that we have for towing advance.
So the Caltrans fronted this money, is what you're saying?
I think they were.
Yeah.
I know it says SACOG up here too, but it was.
Yes.
8 million, I said 8 million plus the SACOG. Thank you very much, SACOG.
Yes.
Thank you.
So it's the 1 point, just for clarity, only because you put SACOG on the other federal funding SACOG line. So it's the 1.56 was SACOG, and then the other funding was also SACOG. Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, so we can move on to the next slide, which you've done, thank you. So Caltrans and YoloTD have distinct roles in the project. They're primarily responsible for project, design and delivery and environmental as well. And our role has generally been more kind of on the outreach and towing advanced planning side. And that's sort of, it kind of oversimplifies it, but that's roughly how the main responsibilities are organized. If you want to click once, please, Norma. So what we're focusing on here with this action, $85.9 million is to enable Caltrans to invoice against design costs and construction costs that are related to the capital project. This funding is not used for things like the MT mitigation or other purposes. This is strictly transferring funding from us for design and construction. Next slide, please. Okay, so the mechanism for doing this is obviously you need to have some sort of agreement. We can't hold on to the money forever, but we don't design and construct projects. So that's what Caltrans' role has always been in this project. And so we knew this day was going to come. The day is here now today. And so that's what this agreement does. It hands over the project essentially to them. And it's your final discretionary action prior to construction starting in fall of this year. But, there was, a lot of coordination with Caltrans staff on, what the right, mechanism should look like, what's the right agreement, template we should be using. So we landed on this capital project transfer and expenditure contract. And there were some things that were important to us that we wanted to make sure were reflected in this agreement, such as, The agreement would prohibit any changes to the project without, YoloTD's consent. And also, the project description is tied to the TSEP funding that they have as well. So there isn't really, a whole lot of maneuvering room for the project description or for the project to be delivered any differently than what we've been discussing this entire time. And so the agreement reflects that. From cost overrun standpoint, that will need to be a partnership in the event that occurs, but it doesn't place that liability on YoloTD. And also the agreement does, indemnify us as YoloTD against any claims made against Caltrans. And we do want to, thank Caltrans District 3 staff for coming with a simple and effective fund transfer agreement that meets our needs. So next slide, please. And so that brings us back around to the recommendation. And again, happy to answer any questions or participate in discussion.
Great, thank you, Brian. I'll turn to Director Sullivan.
Thank you. One of the concerns expressed by members of the public is our potential continuing liability for VMT mitigation and the like. The claim is made that the funding will only generate 50% of the cost, whatever. Does the hold harmless clause in our agreement protect us from any kind of future financial obligations for VMT mitigation?
So it would, but perhaps more importantly, the legal obligation to pay for VMT mitigation when it's adopted in an environmental document by a lead agency, the implementing agency and the lead agency has the legal liability and responsibility for doing that. And addressing the other question that was raised, we don't need an agreement with Caltrans for them to have that obligation. It exists under the Public Resources Code under CEQA. It's been confirmed by case law, but not just this agency, but any person could sue by writ of mandate to enforce the mitigation obligations if Caltrans were not to follow through and adopt and implement those mitigation measures. And there's nothing that would provide for liability for this district as a result of that as a responsible agency. Keep in mind that the California Transportation Commission took the same action that you're taking tonight. Approving as responsible agency, the environmental document, making an overriding consideration. And the CTC also bears no future obligation for mitigation responsibilities in connection with the project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Warren.
It just to add to Tom's question, in the packet, it says that the key provision is that it also indemnifies YoloTD against claims made against Caltrans. Do you just want to add anything on that?
Only to say that we're very satisfied that this agreement does absolutely what it needs to do, which is protect this agency from future financial or legal responsibility, but ensures that the project that this board has adopted and approved is the project that will be built by Caltrans under any circumstances. And if they need or want to change it, they have to come back and get our approval first before they can do that.
Thank you.
So we have the protections we need, but we don't have the liability associated with the project.
Just a quick follow-up. How in the weeds does that go with any kind of what triggers a change that would need to come here? Like at what level does that trigger it?
So that's a good question. And Brian and I actually talked a lot about that. How do we lock in the project as we understand it? And the best document that has the most detail is the application that we made to the California Transportation Commission to fund the project and to obtain tolling authority. It's a very precise definition of the project, and that becomes the touchstone for any changes that might be made in the future.
Okay, thank you. Any other clarifying questions from colleagues before we open public comment? Okay, so with that, we will open public comment on agenda item number 7 and welcome our first public comment.
Getting a lot of trees there, Alan.
I have 484 megabytes. I'm not even gonna ballpark. So we've reached the milestone here, and I thought I would share with you the press release when we got this money back in 2021. It quotes Lucas and John Saylor, our former chair. Can I have my timer restarted? The board's still talking.
I'm just trying to pass this around, sir.
That's fine, that's fine. Wait, I'm sorry, I should have waited. I should have waited. I'm sorry, thank you.
Go for it.
Okay, thank you very much. I thought I would share with you the press release from 2021 when we got this money. And the promises, representation to the public that were made about what this project would do. It calls out, it says two places, it'll reduce greenhouse gases and improve the environment. I know the contract here will basically release you from financial liability, but will it release you from political liability for the representations? Because we know it doesn't reduce greenhouse gases. And the moral responsibility about climate change. And in terms of the project, the staff, let me call out on page 69, what was represented in this. It's a very short contract here, but it was represented that the project describes the project in detail, including the location, lane type, and project activities. It's only two sentences, dozens. And the mitigation measures for which the funds can be used. Mitigation is not mentioned even once in this contract. This is kind of open. The staff report kind of oversells what's in this contract. Kirk has basically assured me this is sufficient to protect the agency from the financial liabilities, but I think we should be clear about what it really does. It does very little. We're relying on other stuff, and I assume Kirk is right. If not, that'll all be ironed out in court. Caltrans is. I'm just quite concerned that this project, again, you're moving ahead on a project where you really are not accomplishing your values were about an environment, and this project doesn't accomplish that. It speeds traffic short term. It's a short term fix. It allows in the long term, it allows the richest to opt out with the managed lanes or the Tahoe traffic with three to ride in the free lane. So I don't think it accomplishes what we wanted to do. The public traffic will return. This is, and you only spent 4 minutes discussing the EIR, then top of the 16.5 minutes back in December. Have you really done your due diligence? This is the accountability part of political stuff, and I'm just kind of disappointed about the lack of thoroughness here, but thank you.
Thank you, Noel. Any other in-person public comment for agenda item number 7? Do we have any hand raised online?
We do not have any hands raised online.
Okay, thank you. So I'll bring it back to the dais for conversation, any further questions. Director Burks.
Yeah, first I'd like to move the item.
I'll second.
A couple quick comments. First, I really appreciate the highlighting of the press release, actually, because I was gonna do that myself this evening. I just want to take a moment, I'll probably all saw the news today that our former congressman, current congressman from the 8th district, Congressman John Garamendi, was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is a relatively rare type of blood cancer. And so he's undergoing treatment. That was sort of in the, various media today. I just want to thank him. It was 3 years ago, basically, that the advocacy work that he engaged in for this entire region resulted in this $86 million infra grant to this agency, soon to be to another sister agency. And so I'm really grateful for all the advocacy work that John Garamendi has done for this entire region for over 40 years. And so representing this area quite well. So just wanted to express our best wishes, my best wishes, probably our best wishes to Congressman Garamendi, Patty, and the whole family. And so, and I was going to raise this exact press release because it was just 3 years ago, and a week ago that this happened. So I think we've seen I think a very good partnership with Caltrans. Obviously, at the time when it was first awarded the infra grant, I was still a member of the SACOG board. No longer am, obviously, but a number of the folks in this board still are and are representing our region quite well. Think about all the steps that have taken place over the intervening 3 years, including, of course, the formation of CARTA, the Regional Tolling Authority, but many other, I think, positive steps as well, and including that sort of close relationship with partner agency at Caltrans. So I feel very comfortable in the transfer and expenditure contract with Caltrans. I feel like there are enough sureties and protections built in as well, and appreciate the work of the special counsel on that. And those are my comments. Appreciate your consideration of the motion.
Thank you, Director Burks. turn to any of my other colleagues up on the dais for comments. Victor? No, I'll just kind of close up with a few words and thank you to our staff team, to Kirk and all your work on this. And thank you for your comments, Director Ferricks, on this. And I know, you know, this has been a project that's been in the making for a number of years, for 3 years, and they quantifying it into just into two meetings as being the body of work that we have done considering this project is not an accurate reflection of the work that this board and our staff has done to try and look at what this project is. No project that comes forward, whether it's something like this or at the city or land use, is going to be perfect. And I step back as a policymaker and look at overriding considerations, concerns, and especially in the city in which I represent, in the district I represent, which oftentimes sees the direct impact of the congestion on I-80 that backs up into South Davis, and causes a lot of safety concerns in that community, that this is can help be a solution to that problem. I have said over and over again that I do not think that doing nothing is an option. And what's before us is either we leave it the way it is and hope and pray that somehow, some way, we're going to get magical dollars to get rail service or to get Amtrak extensions or to get a high-speed train that's going to take us up and down this corridor, isn't the reality that we face. So when I step back and look at this, this has been approved by unanimously, I believe, by this board in particular, by a board previous to us, that people who aren't sitting up here. This went to the SACOG board and our whole metropolitan region was approved unanimously. It went to CTC and was approved unanimously. And then SACOG held a meeting with the different interjurisdictional groups, EPA, CARB, FHWA. And it came back that this project did not have a determination that it was not a project of air quality concern, which is in our staff report. And that came from CARB, from the California EPA and other folks that were in that meeting held by SACOG. So I understand the concerns of folks that are here this evening. I understand the concerns of folks who are not here this evening, who have made public comments in previous meetings, who have sent us letters to this board, who have sent us letters or to the city of Davis when we've taken this up at our own city council meetings. At the end of the day, there aren't going to be agenda items that we all always agree on. And I respectfully disagree with the notion that this is going to somehow be detrimental to Yolo County. And I don't see that. And I respect the opinions of the people who are on the other side of this conversation. I truly mean that. And I am here this evening knowing and happy to move something forward that is us identifying this problem and as policymakers and decisions makers and leaders in this county doing something to try and address this issue. So I'm happy to support that here this evening. And if there's no other comments, I will call for a vote.
Said it better.
Director Warren.
I'm honored to be on this dais with my colleagues and their words of wisdom. I was chair in 2020. We were working towards this and we were awarded in 2021. And I think that there's a multitude of people that are farmers and hard truck driving, car driving workers that are from my community and communities in Solano and other communities that are getting work done. That they might be union workers, they might be service workers, they might be getting medical treatment at UC Davis Medical Center. That they're stuck in that causeway, and they really do deserve to get to their families in a timely manner. And they'll never know us really, but I think that their lives will be better because of this project. So I'm really grateful that we're moving forward with this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions from my colleagues or comments? Okay, so we have a motion by Director Ferricks and a second by Director Warren. All in favor, please say aye.
I
Opposed, abstained, motion carries 5-0. Okay, agenda item number 8. Brian's back on the hot seat over there. Approve resolution 2024-15, authorizing the executive director to release a request for qualifications RFQ for consulting services for the Yolo 80 managed lanes tolling advanced planning project and terminate agreement with WSP USA Inc. for tolling advanced planning consulting services. So mouthful. Brian.
So there's always more work to do with YOLO 80 and the project, and you're probably wondering, well, I thought we were already working on tolling advanced planning and thought we already had consultants to do this. Let's talk about the background of this action and that we're requesting from you, and then proceed from there. So a little bit of background, back in summer of 22, once there was, really good sense that the project was going to become a toll managed lane project. We did conduct a competitive selection process for consulting assistance on the Yolo 80 managed lane, specifically related to tolling, because we knew that we didn't have the in-staff expertise to to provide informed recommendations to our board. And after that selection process occurred, we executed agreement with WSP, who's been providing us with really good services over the past year and a half, related to all things tolling and Yolo 80 managed lanes. In June of last year, we were awarded that $2 million grant from SACOG that we've been referencing over the past few months, and that was really to help us meet all the milestones and develop all the work products necessary in order to get from the idea of toll managed lanes to actually operating toll managed lanes. And so a lot of that work that we had scoped for this purpose, some of it's been done, but there's still more work to do. In November of 23 of last year, was when we actually issued the agreement for them to start working on things like, next slide, please. The concept of operations, that's a completed work product that fed into the tolling authority application, which is also complete, which led to the California Transportation Commission's action this past May to authorize, approve CARTA as a tolling authority. Also governance and tolling authority, so establishing the JPA and determining what, the correct sort of form of governance should be. That's largely complete as well, although that's an ongoing, body of government that continues to work together. But we think that most of the work that we needed to do in setting that up is largely complete. Community engagement is something that we consider to be ongoing. But two big ones that we haven't started yet are related to procuring roadside tolling equipment and all the back end staffing and organization and interfaces between the equipment on the ground and the end user. So there's a whole world in there that if you've used Fast Track and you've gotten a violation notice that you went through SAT, you used their lanes and you didn't have an account set up, then you get a delinquent notice and you have to pay that. But they give you forgiveness if you're a first time offender. So we need to figure out what all that, what the relationships look like, what the work needs to be done in order to successfully stand up the actual, tolling integration system. We also need to do a level 2 traffic and revenue study that will help inform the tolling ordinance that CARTA needs to take action on at a later date related to what will the tolling hours be, what will days of the week will operate, who will get, special, exemptions and so forth. And so then that will help also set the fees for the tolling as well. So that's a really important, piece of analysis that needs to be done. We have a level 1 done, and that was good enough for tolling authority. The level 2 is really needed to refine those assumptions and enable the CARTA board to make, specific action relating to how the toll managed lanes will themselves be managed. And of course, we have the equity framework and program that needs to be started and ultimately completed. So we're working with CARTA on this issue as to who has what roles related to equity. There's, there's sort of a regional component to it, and there's also sort of a project level component. So we have this task that still needs to be completed. We've also learned through the TDM, through the VMT mitigation planning process that, with the funding coming into Yolo County as VMT mitigation, that we need to make sure that there's an organization that can actually implement those programs on the scale that the EIR requires. And so we're gonna use some of this funding to better understand, is it a nonprofit that should be doing this? Is it YoloTD that should be doing this? Is it, third party sort of marketing firm that should be doing this type of work, and who should be, overseeing that work? So that's gonna be an important document as well. And of course, we have continued need for legal advisory services as well. So that's what's been done. Go ahead, Kirk.
Didn't mean to point, sorry.
That's all right, but it's a good opportunity for me to say, I have not reviewed this item, I've not provided advice on it, and I cannot give you any counsel on it because I anticipate being a participant in a team or teams who will respond to the RFQ. So I am not here in any capacity representing.
You need to step out of the room.
I don't need to step out of the room, but I need to let you know that as a matter of record. So thanks for.
I thought he was asking for a cupcake.
Did you want to chat?
All right, so that's the landscape under which we are, or the context under which this item is being brought to you. And so getting to the question of why do we need to rebid? Well, back in, what was it? Like I said, in August of 22, we did competitively bid, but there are specific requirements for selecting consultants if you're using federal funds, and it wasn't compliant to that. And so when we were trying to submit invoices for some of the costs that we've incurred, they weren't willing to process them. And then we sort of discovered that, we need to go out and we need to rebid this work.
Brian, could you just share what wasn't compliant?
The process that we use to select our consultants.
I'm just actually specificity. I'm just curious.
So the key issue here was primarily revolves around, so they have a checklist. So you have to comply with the checklist that they have. And then, but most of it focuses on disadvantaged business enterprises as being, part of, your consulting team, and them having the opportunity to participate on the consulting team and to participate on some of the work in the project.
Got it. Okay, so, just to summarize it, DEI, component, is that what it was?
CDE.
DBE, okay, all right, thank you.
It's also worth noting that this is a highly specialized area of work, that there's only a handful of firms that can actually do this type of work. But we have sort of re-scoped the project, and we do have a DBE goal for moving forward, where we think that we can be compliant with the requirements. And of course, we've exhausted all of our other options. We talked to Caltrans, we talked to SACOG. Yes, is there anything is there anything that will allow us to continue moving forward? But there just simply isn't. We need to go out and rebid, which is fine. But once we learned this, we did issue a stop work order to WSP. And so none of that work, what was it? The roadside toll system procurement and the integration, that work should be occurring now, but it's not. We'll probably be able to catch up, but that's not happening. And neither is a level 2 traffic study. So that's the tangible impact that's occurring right now. We did incur about $240,000 in expenses that were grant eligible. Caltrans is considering those to be our local cash match, and will allow us to reimburse in the future at 100% of our incurred costs as a result of that. So the next slide sort of will help visualize a little bit. If you go down to just below row 10, right, and you go to staff time and cash match, that's sort of the difference between what we've incurred directly in local cash and what we think we can recover by the end of this process, which is expected to to continue up until and through the opening of the toll managed lanes. And next slide, please. So moving forward, we will, if we are fortunate to get your approval, we will proceed with a federally compliant consultant procurement process. And we think we'll be able to bring this back in September or October for your action, in which case we would start picking back up the work that we had to stop. Also know that CARTA and SACOG are conducting a regional toll program work plan, so they're doing somewhat somewhat complementary work, but more looking at the regional level and what CARTA needs to do as a tolling, organization and how they should be structured. And the two processes are in pretty close alignment from a timing perspective. And of course, we're coordinating, closely with CARTA as well. All right, last slides. And we're bringing the staff recommendation in front of you here. Item number 2, so is primarily a formality. We just want to get formal action terminating our agreement with WFT. Again, in parentheses here, this is more procedural. It's not a reflection of the work that we've received from them today. So that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Brian.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I think, as this presentation, and in fact, all 3 presentations really illustrates, we are so incredibly lucky to have Brian Avenat here. I know I'm oftentimes the face of this project out in public, but behind the scenes, I mean, all of these moving pieces that you see that are incredibly complex and technical, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Brian, and I'm just so grateful that he came here with it. The city of Davis let us have him, and I just, he doesn't, he shies away from the spotlight, and so I'm just here to embarrass him. But because really, he is the force behind this project for all this time, on top of all the other things that he does, and so I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge him. Thanks.
Thank you, Autumn. I will turn to my colleagues for any clarifying questions before we go to public comment. Does anyone have any questions for us after public comment? Director Stoller?
It's disappointing that we have to go out and do this all over again, but it's better to make the decision now to get it right, than to find out later that you should have done what we're doing now. So thank you. And I certainly agree with the compliments of our director of planning. And taking praise is kind of tough sometimes, but we just want you to know you're good and we appreciate it.
You can have 2 companies done for presenting.
Thank you, Director Stoller. Okay, so not seeing any other clarifying questions, I will turn to public comment for agenda item number 8, and welcome our first public commenter. Welcome.
Alan Hirsch, to be clear, there's an appreciation of doing it right and crossing the i's and dotting the t's, or the other way around, and doing the right thing. I appreciate the tremendous amount of work of staff and the thoroughness of this thing. On this particular thing, I'm afraid there might be a confirmation bias, and I'm really concerned that enforcement has to be part of this program, because unlike HOV lanes, when you have extra people sneaking into these managed lanes, you basically reduce the capacity and the other people who want to pay more. So it's really important we have robust enforcement. If you go around looking at license plates, you will see many, probably 5 or 10% of license plates are defaced in some manner and not viewable. So you can't enforce it for that thing. The other thing is, as Autumn has said on the radio, that basically the honor system 3+ in a car is unauditable. It's an honor system. You cannot determine whether someone is cheating, whether they really have 3 people in the back seat or 1 cover in the back seat, because you can 100% tint back windows on cars. So there needs to be some way to enforce this thing, because it's not a victimless crime when someone uses the lanes illegally. And I note that there's an incentive to turn the other way. We saw with HOV lanes. We have 50%, in some cases, almost 50% basically people who shouldn't be using it because there's no enforcement. There's an incentive to turn the back. Caltrans turns their back on it. You say, because we just have more cars, and that's all we're looking for. And we do that, we have less money for mitigation which is what we're trying to do about this thing. So this has to be robust part of the contract, robust part of basically what was happening to them. So I'm really urging that should be a significant impetus on that. Otherwise, it gives us an incentive to turn the other way, especially because you don't want to admit you made a mistake here. So please make sure your contractor does that and there's robust and that's really reviewed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. Do we have any other in-person public comment for agenda item number 8? Okay. Do we have any hands raised online?
We do not have any hands raised online.
All right, thank you. So we will close public comment on item number 8, and I will return it back to the dais to my colleagues. Dr. Stoll.
Lauren will second. Others.
We have a motion by Dr. Stoller, a second by Dr. Lauren, and I'll turn to Director Early.
I just have a couple of questions, and thankfully my colleague over here directed me to the part of the packet that I needed to question. So for the disadvantaged business enterprise, I just I feel like maybe I don't fully understand it, and I would love to understand it. So 6% of the contract is gonna be set aside for the DBE.
It's a goal. So depending on the responses that we get and who we select, the consulting teams try as best as they can to find DBEs that they can partner with to meet that 6% goal. It's not a set aside. It's kind of like CEQA. If you're not able to meet it and can have, circumstances which are justifiable, then you can continue, with your project without meeting that goal. So it's not a mandate. But in this case, there are some, tasks that, we feel like are not, unique skill set only to what we would call a prime consultant. They could be delegated to, not delegated, but they could use a disadvantaged business to partner with. In this case, we feel like, community outreach and engagement is one of those. It isn't a skill set that's specialized to, say, WSP, which is who we had before. But a lot of the other tasks are. Now, DBEs themselves, they register with the state of California, and they register under certain codes. And so then when we look at our tasks, then Caltrans, they're what's called a Form 9D. You look at it and they tell you which codes to look up to see if, if a DBE is registered for that type of work. And so then we go to their portal, we look that up, and that's how we come up with, here's the scope of work item, here's the amount, here's the number of DBEs that qualify to perform that work. And then therefore, we follow the calculation, and that's how you come up with your goal. Make sense?
It does. I have feelings, but it does make sense. And so once the RFP is out, because that's part of what we're going to be approving here, then we would, whoever we select through that RFP process would be the ones going through the DBE process, or is YTD staff doing this?
They, well, in this case, we're doing an RFQ, so we're selecting based on qualifications, but we will ask them if they feel like they can meet the DBE goal. So there's, some discussion there that will occur. And then, actually,
It's okay.
your question just slipped my mind.
It's yes, no, so is it the consultant that is doing, because you just named like a process in which you have a list,
Yeah.
you're going forward. Maybe you meet it, maybe you don't, as long as you try.
Yeah,
And
so-
so I'm
Yeah,
curious.
they fill out a form that we then have to have on file and submit to Caltrans that says, so this was their good faith effort. So that has to be documented of who they contacted and then whether or not that DBE was even, have the availability and the bandwidth to perform that, that task on the teams.
And then just last thing, you tell us, do we actually check in with them regarding just the effort level on it?
Yeah, in fact, we have this with several of our other projects, like the Yahtzee project. We have DBEs on that project, and so they're part of the team. So then when you have like team coordination meetings, which is commonly on like a bi-weekly basis, all of the consulting team, the prime and the sub are all sort of, in that conversation together.
So that makes me feel a little bit more heartened, only because anytime I hear that there is an effort level to try, but you don't necessarily have to meet it if you tried that. Quite frankly, it makes me nervous, particularly when you're talking about disadvantage or underserved businesses. So that's just one. The other last follow-up question on this is, so what you're saying is you have other work that's happening here at YTD in which there are DBEs, and so you have been successful, or we've been successful in having consultants that can meet our DBE requirements.
Um,
Oh, did I overstate it?
well, I'm just trying to make sure I'm trying to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples.
Okay, that's fair.
So like the Yahtzee project is quite a bit different than this one. That's a very, defined scope of work, and this is a little bit more, is not as defined in terms of specific activities we're asking them to do. Because we have these sort of, general, tasks that we're asking our consultants to work with us on. But nonetheless, in this case, because we think that outreach and engagement is an appropriate task that can be subbed out to a DBE. When we have that work to be done, that DBE will be doing that work, right? So once they're on the team, they're committed, that work is committed to them. So it isn't.
But getting on the team actually
Getting on the
will
team.
rely on our consultant
Yeah.
finding them,
Yeah.
engaging them
Yeah,
in
they-
order for them to get on the
That
team.
they have to find, and in the case of Yahtzee, the DBE that we have for the community outreach, they're actually from Los Angeles area. So-
Yeah. I think the only, I will not stand in the way, because you guys have already moved it forward, and I'm less, I guess, nervous about that. I will be fascinated and curious about the process. I will absolutely be asking questions and checking in if we were able to meet this goal, and how much of the 130,000 actually went to where we aspired for it to go. And so I'll name that and put that here.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to put a focus on how the consulting team is formed, and that, we're putting our best foot forward on this item.
Director First, thank you. I very appreciate the questions and sort of back and forth answers. Same questions. I also have and drill down a little bit more on that. I think if I'm reading it correctly, especially on the spreadsheet, it says that there are 3,556 available DBEs. I assume that we'll say in the state of California. I don't know where the geography relies there. So I
think you can find one.
There may be at least one that is able to be found that would be suitable for the purposes of this effort. So just similarly, we're very interested in seeing and paying attention to this process. I mean, I think that seems, I understand it's a goal, and it's just not a requirement from, I believe, just in this place, in this circumstance, Caltrans, but definitely it's laudable, it's important, and I think it's a statement of values issue. The other question I had, and I appreciated Director Early's questions just about the process, because I actually also, there was not a lot on process in terms of next steps, except for coming back, to execute the agreement in September, October. What happens between today and coming back and executing an agreement? That I'm curious about that process. So our RFQ hits the street, sure. And then what? X amount of time for that RFQ to be out in the street, solicit bids, come back, who sort of reviews those bids? Is there any sort of, is there any sort of intermediary steps between the board or, community advisory committee? Curious about that whole process. So thanks.
Yeah, I think that you pretty much just outlined the process right there. There is.
It's not anywhere in here, so I don't know, curious about it.
Some of it is on the cover sheet of the RFQ itself, where the audience there is really the consulting teams. So yes, there's the RFQ will go out onto the streets, right? We'll give them enough time to compile their statements of qualifications and submit them to us. We will review them, and we need to establish an evaluation team. So there's a formal evaluation process that will go through. They'll include internal and external, evaluators. And then if the timing works out, we can certainly bring this back to CAC. They meet in July and then probably not again until September. So that timing could work out. But again, we're selecting a consulting team based on their qualifications, not on the specific, work product. So I would still be comfortable, coming to the board with, the results of that process without having gone to the CAC if the timing doesn't work out, because we really don't want to hold up any more work. But if that's important to you, we can accommodate that, to have the CAC review it.
Thanks, thank you, appreciate all that.
I appreciate that. Oh, wait.
Okay.
Can I get rid of the shirt? Okay. I think just the last thing Kurt, you've been amazing. You really have. I would be curious about what that panel looks like, right? Because here you have a request for qualification, so I appreciate you saying that. How is it unbiased? I'm just curious about again, just acknowledging the fact that it's been an amazing partnership, right? Potentially, it could be this could be this company, it could be another. And so just recognizing.
Well, to the extent that you can eliminate any bias in the consultant selection process, you start by establishing your evaluation criteria, and what how you're going to base your scores for consultants under each category. And so it's kind of like a rubric, right? So, if, here's the scale under this, category criterion, right? And then here, if they have, X amount of experience here, then you give them, in this scoring rate. So it's really trying to apply, as objective of a criteria as possible. And then hopefully, with, enough evaluators, you generally kind of end up with a consensus. Not always, but, usually do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Quick question, and then I'll come comments and I'm good. Who is the 6%? Is that our YTD's policy? Where's the 6% from? Is that a state? What is that?
No, well, the 6% was what we calculated as a goal for this project in compliance with federal procurement requirements.
So it changes variable. So like on the Yahtzee, it wasn't 6%.
No, it was something else.
Got it. Okay. So
But
just,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And in fact, I received word back from Caltrans today that they feel that our goal should be 10% because they reviewed they reviewed our Form 9D and said, well, we think there's another area here that the DBEs could participate in. So that's what they have signed off on, is the 10% DB. So that will get changed in the RFQ that goes out.
And if I may, so I worked for a DBE consulting firm for several years. And so I learned a bit about this process, trying to get on teams and get work for our firm. So there are certain federal rules that agencies have to comply with, and the size of your agency matters, right? So larger agencies have mandatory goals that they have to meet. Smaller agencies have targets, right? So they provide more flexibility to smaller agencies like ours. That said, there are also agencies that set their own goals that go above and beyond what the federal minimums and requirements. And so, if that is something that this board wants to do, that is absolutely something that's within our power. Now, there's trade-offs in that, right? Because if you set mandatory goals, then you have less flexibility. We don't award massive amounts of contracts compared to some other agencies, and so we have less flexibility in terms of meeting those goals. So there are trade-offs involved, but it is at the discretion of the agency and the agency's board to decide how aggressive we want to be with our DBE targets. So we have the feds really establish minimums, but there's a lot more that we can do.
Yeah, thank you. So just quickly, and we'll wrap up. Yeah, there's two pieces I want to touch on. One is, Brian, earlier you brought up kind of discussions that we had a few months ago around equity, around the equity plans on this. And I'm pretty sure, Director Early and I are on the CARTA board with Supervisor Viejas and Supervisor Desmond, the SAC. So we've met a couple of times over the past few months and starting to get that worked on, and we have representation on that board. And I do know that there's definitely interest from both of us in being hands-on and coming to this board, reporting back on what some of those plans look like as they move along. Around the enforcement piece, I just spent a few days out in Denver with SACOG. We visited the Colorado Department of Transportation, and one of the big pieces they talked about is what one of our public commenters referenced was kind of this evolving trend in enforcement and how they continue to evolve around that and different tools that they're using there in hot lanes that they've had for over a decade and more, and continue to expand in the Denver area right now. They're doing it currently. And different tools that they're using, because they don't have the dividers down the middle, but they do have lots of different technology in place that they're implementing and getting funds for to do exactly that. They had the numbers provide us with the information around the people that they know are violating that are moving from lane to lane, that are not doing it, and they have fine structures set up, $75 per instance. They have the report back on who pays, when they pay, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of it out there. One of the things that I took back from that with Director Viejas, who was there on the trip with us as well, was really hoping that we can find another tolling agency or group like ours who has set something up recently, and maybe get a couple of board members, people from Carter, whomever, to go and sit and have those conversations with them and learn from what they're doing, what they've just done. I think Colorado and what they're doing in Denver may be a little bit different. They've been around for a longer time. It's not fresh what they're doing, and change they've made is, but not just getting one up and running and off the ground. It would be beneficial for us to try and do that and just, dive more into it if that's possible. So those are some of the pieces as we work through our work on CARTA and our partners there, that a lot of the things that are here before us and that we see, especially on this item around the equity framework and the tolling rates and all that, is the work that's going to be happening moving forward. So looking forward to doing that with you as well. So
one quick clarification question, I want to clarify, so this is going to be revised to 10%. Okay, great, thanks.
Great, thank you. So any other comments from my colleagues? Okay, so seeing none, remind me again who had that, was it
Down there, I think.
Director Stoller, moved by Director Stoller, seconded by Director Lauren. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries 5-0.
Great.
All right, thank you. So we are now to agenda item number 9, administrative reports. 9A, I will look to any of my colleagues in the dais for board member verbal reports. Down to Greg. So quiet down there today.
No, I went on vacation in May and I came back, so like I'm telling you, what did I miss? Well, I had.
Okay, it's every meeting.
Yeah. I had to go on vacation because, well, my boss at home. So it's the only time you get to go to Asia, we're not going back. Really? And we were in good hands though, I think, to Director Chapman's point, the staff here at YTD, great crew, great leadership, briefed you well, very diligently, and I want to thank Gurtej publicly. The best thing I could have done was hire him out of Sacramento back to District 3. I was very happy about that. He didn't know he was going to be working on YoloTD. I didn't tell you that, right? One of his compadres asked, "What are you going to be working on?" At YoloTD. So it was great to be a part of this. We're still not done. We've got some challenges, but great opportunities to learn from a lot coming up. As far as the tolling authority items, it's not something we're normally used to doing here at Caltrans. In May of 2023, it was in the CPC meeting in Oakland, looking at the people debate the 37 project and talk about the toll authority and maybe 194. And I'm thinking, oh man, we've got a lot of work to do. And your staff stepped up. I want to thank SACOG too, but to establish CARTA was a big thing. So I want to give my appreciation to everybody on this team, and I'm proud of all of you.
Thank you, Greg. Any other board member reports?
Really quick one, Supervisor Barajas and I routinely hold a agricultural issues forum, and the two our districts represent everything west of 505 in Yolo County. And so our last forum was last week, on one of the 110-degree days. And so thankfully it was held indoors at the new Cape Valley Community Health Center. But there were about 45 people in attendance, many members of the agriculture community, particularly farmers, but also a number of other farm workers as well, but a bunch of mixture of folks. And the issue came up on a number of occasions about fixed route service to the Cape about it. And so not just fixed route service to the casino, but sort of, so it's an issue that I want to raise here. It's an issue I'd love to have further discussion with staff around. A lot of the farmers in the Cape Valley have, many of them have employees who they believe would utilize fixed route service if it was offered further than the casino. Perhaps there's also some ability to do, ostensibly some kind of a shuttle beyond the casino. So it just, so I just want to just have, raise that on behalf of Supervisor Ross and myself, and then also just either if it's not on a future agenda officially, I definitely want to have a further conversation with staff about the issues that we heard from a bunch of community members in the western part of the county. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. Any other board member comments? Sure, Director Lauren.
I wanted to say thank you to everyone for remembering it was my birthday, that I was gonna be staying home to come to a meeting, but what a amazing meeting. I mean, it's a historical meeting. And also, if, I'm not sure if it's the time that on the, in the item, there's the long range calendar, and I think that what's coming up is the Beeline progress report. And aside from the public comment that showed in our email today, that I have had feedback from riders who stopped meeting winners and said that they had an event where 4 of them were stranded. The bus just couldn't come back for them, and they did get a ride home from Good Samaritan. But it just anecdotally, it seems like the bookends of the beginning of the day and the end of the day are the problems. And I think that microtransit really works during the rest of the day, but they need to get back to the hub in Davis so they can get to Sacramento at the end of the day. And if the bus ends at 4:30 and it doesn't come, they just miss getting home. So I know that it's gonna come back to us, and I know that you'll have a great, solution. But I just want to mention that there's, people that really need our services. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other board member verbal reports? Okay, we will now go to 9B, TransDev verbal report. Do we have someone online from TransDev?
I know Michael was driving back from, he was on the road. I'm not sure if he was able to call in. Do we have Michael Klein there?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Sorry, give me one quick second here. I'm trying to get him promoted in. Michael, you're in.
Can you hear us, Michael?
You're muted.
Michael, you're muted. If you're, yep, there you go.
Yep, it had to go through the motion. Good evening. Good evening, Chair Chapman, Vice Chair Dante, directors, and a special happy birthday to Director Lauren.
Thank you.
Good to report. We with recruitment is continuing to go very well. We actually started a new class today, and we're looking at this is going to be the last class we're probably going to do for at least a month or more. We're in a very good position right now to cover what we have currently in planning and put us in a very good spot for future planning, to where we haven't been for the last few years, of course, but we are in a very good position right now. Any questions?
I don't think so. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, 9C, Executive Director's verbal report.
Thank you, Chair. And if we may, Norma, can you go ahead and pull up the last slide, which is the long range calendar? I want to cover some of the items I wanted to touch on my ED report are also long range calendar. So I thought we might just do it all at once. So it's been a few months since we've done a long range calendar. We're excited now. We have a work plan and a budget to continue moving forward with some of our items, and we've got some new ones coming. Now, we don't have a meeting in August, to just remind everybody, there is no meeting in August. September is looking really long. Some of this stuff may have to move, but it's all important. So let me just dive in. We've got a public hearing and possible action on restoration of the Route 44. That's the South Davis Express that was approved as part of the budget tonight. Our goal is to restore all the express services this fall, as soon as possible. And I know that our team has been coordinating with TransDev to hopefully ensure that we have sufficient drivers and vehicles to make that happen. So we want to have that possible action move quickly. And then, as Director Lauren just mentioned, Beeline, we have our Beeline progress report. This was our six months worth of data progress report, and we wanted to fold that in our preliminary discussion of service changes in winter. So bringing that to you September, and then coming back in October, having gone through then some public outreach and refinement with a public hearing and possible action on that service change and expansion in winters. We also, the Yahtzee project came up tonight. There's been a ton of work happening on the Yahtzee project, and we've just had such full agendas. We really haven't had a chance to even bring that to you in a long time. But we do want to make sure we get that to you, because we're approaching some, we've wrapped up a ton of public outreach and as well as existing conditions analysis, and want to touch base with you on what we've heard and what we've learned before we kind of move forward with making some decisions on the direction of that project. And then also an update on the Woodland Transit Center. So as you'll recall, you approved us going to a 30% design and working with our consultants to get to 30% design and making sure there's no fatal flaws with the location that we've chosen. We are wrapping that work up, and we'll be prepared to bring it to you as soon as September. The next step then would be to go to 100% design, the fully complete design, including and making sure we can identify the funding for implementation, and then once 100% design is completed, execute the project and actually work towards moving into our new transit center. And then the Caltrans letter of commitment to CARTA, the Capital Area Regional Tolling Authority. Those of you who are involved may recall that Caltrans made certain commitments around how they would be supporting CARTA, some of the services they would provide. So that letter is going to be coming to CARTA and also to this board for review and consideration. Now, there's a new item on there that was not in the packet, which is a response to a grand jury report on homelessness in Yolo County. So let me take a moment to just talk about that. This grand jury report was released several weeks ago. It has a broad range of actions related to homelessness in Yolo County, but one of the recommendations is around the Fourth and Hope facility here in Woodland, located in the northeast corner of Woodland. It is not currently served by public transit. They are doing some private transportation, but the concern has been raised, and we've heard it. Not just in this grand jury report, we have heard it, that the service that they have does not meet the needs that are out there, and they are interested in seeing if YoloTD would provide services to their facility. So, of course, we're not required to do exactly what the grand jury requests, but we do need to have a response. So we'll be bringing that response to you in September, that draft response before it's due. And I'm coordinating with Director Stoller, of course, on that, as well as Chair Chapman, and treating them as my informal ad hoc committee on that before it comes to you in September. So that's everything that's on the agenda for September. Again, I realize that we'd be here till midnight if we do all of those things. So we'll be working on figuring out what we can shift around. In October, again, we want to bring back that Beeline service changes in winters. We want to talk about, this is something that came up earlier, these special workshops on the YoloTD budget. We want to bring to you a proposal for that. How many workshops, what are the topics we want to cover, what are the goals of that? So we think our first step is to really just have that conversation as a board and get your input on what are your goals for that process? What do you want to get out of it? And so that's what we want to bring you a draft of that in October, get your feedback, and then, based on that, move forward with executing and developing those special workshops. Short range transit plan is coming along as well. We were hoping to bring you an update in October on that. And then by that point, it'll be time for our first quarter finance update for the new fiscal year. So lots on the horizon there in terms of long range calendars. A couple of things I want to quickly mention. We did launch microtransit in the community of Yolo on July 1st. So when we're reporting in September on the status of microtransit, we'll be telling you how it's been going in the first couple of months of operation there. And also, we just wrapped up a series of open houses in Davis, Woodland, and West Sacramento to get input on both our short-range transit plan and our Yahtzee active transportation chorus project. We had about 80 people that attended across those 3 open houses, which is great. We'll be bringing you updates and the results of that. We do have a survey for our short-range transit plan that's currently live and is going to stay open for a while to solicit more feedback. And then finally, one of the things, we just did those workshops in Davis, Woodland, and West Sacramento, but before that, we actually did a bunch of workshops in rural communities all throughout the county, particularly on active transportation. But because we were going out to communities that don't hear from us very much, we got all kinds of feedback on all kinds of transportation issues, as you can imagine. And our associate planner, Brenda Loma Lee, who was the lead on that, she's very fired up and on what are some of the different transportation solutions that our rural communities need. And so Brian and I have been talking about further out in the calendar, we want to bring you just a snapshot of what have we heard from our rural communities about what their transportation needs are, and what are they saying their needs are, and what are some of the kind of innovative programs and ideas that are out there in other rural counties to serve these rural communities. So we're looking forward to finding a not so busy time on the agenda to bring some of that information to you. And with that, I will wrap up and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Autumn. Any questions for Autumn before we go to public comment? Dr. Early?
I have just a couple points and a couple questions. So, for the goals, the format that'll happen in October, great that you're gonna come to us, and I'm assuming that you're also gonna do this, but I just wanna name it, that you're also gonna go to our city managers and get some of the feedback, right, that you incorporate into the draft. That will help just in regards to timing as well. You don't have a city manager, you have a CEO? Yeah.
Equivalent.
Okay, there you go. And the same there. And then, one of the things that at least would be helpful for me, as we've talked about incorporating data, needing to maybe wait for, the data to be, the different machinery to be put in our buses and that kind of thing. Not necessarily needing to be on the agenda, but I would love to, in your executive report, as we lead up to December, just get a quick update on, and this is how it's going really well. I hate to get to December and then find out like, we've got 6 more months before it, right? So, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Fergus, is it the piece that Autumn brought up around the feedback from rural communities, does that encompass what you were, and you're okay with that timeline? Yeah. Okay, great. All right, so with that, we will open public comment on agenda item number 9. Welcome.
And Al, there's a number of suggestions. September, you're having a hearing on putting the express buses back in Davis. Why not have this board meeting in Davis? We're hearing good big buzz in the community. I think it's appropriate. QR code should be put in at every bus stop so people can have access the on-time application, which was very helpful this evening, but you need to have the QR code to find it. The grand jury report on homelessness. We are in New York City, we're not used to riding buses, and you want the middle class to ride the buses, that's the real key. You need to make people feel safe, and we aren't used to that. So I think it's important, security be discussed as part of that project, cameras and buses and whatnot. I think this is real humanity. I mean, I look at the light rail system north out of Sacramento. It runs right by Loaves and Fishes, a transit dependent community, and they didn't put a light rail stop there. Coincidence? Was it a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's a bad thing, but there are reasons. Let's talk about that. And in terms of the quality of ridership and missed buses, which Jesse brought up and I experienced this evening, I think your report, your board would be well served to have a quality report that comes every month by the board, on-time performance, some sort of metric of quality, so missed buses and things like that, number of complaints or something like that. So there's some emphasis. There's an emphasis on doing more route miles and whatnot, but the quality of that's really important for riders is dependent on it. So thank you very much for all your hard work.
Thank you, Alan. Do you have any other? Yeah, welcome.
Again, Michael Barnbaum, Public Transportation Advocacy and Consulting. Want to thank the executive director for bringing up the long range calendar. A lot of the things we talked about earlier, Mr. Chairman, in the budget item. I just want to say, since that item to now, I had privately met with, and I want to recognize Chief Operating Officer Daisy Romero in the audience. We're definitely going to have a meeting between the board meetings because of the roughly 60-day gap. We're definitely going to talk about item number 4 that was brought up in the testimony that was read into the record during the budget item. But just having an overall budget workshop and the items that were talked about today under item 5 on your agenda are certainly good talking topics we can discuss, I think, and have a healthy discussion in a budget workshop. But also, like I'm going to have hopefully in August, we're going to find a mutual date and time to do so, to have, you know, even a one-on-one or 1-on-3, you know, up here just during business hours on a weekday to go over some of that stuff and maybe fine tune what could be brought later before the board. Love the discussion about the 16 trips we talked about on the 42A and B. If we can meet the challenges of the vehicle operator availability and recruitment and retention, along with anything that could be done for the cost sharing agreement. That's a key thing. Cost sharing agreement for a ballpark shuttle, eliminating any liability of any transit operator doing such a shuttle of the direct operating costs being responsible borne on them. Okay. So thank you for bringing this back.
Thank you, Michael. Do we have any other in-person public comment for agenda item number 9? Do we have any hand raised online?
We do not have any hands raised online.
Okay, so we will close agenda, public comment on agenda item number 9, and I'll return to the dais for any further questions on or additions to the long range. Director Sullivan.
Move adjournment, Mr. Chair.
Any of my colleagues have anything else for long range?
Early seconds.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Take some
For
cupcakes.
the record, the meeting is adjourned at 8:07 p.m.
Thanks.